The Honourable David Parker.
I hope not to disappoint the last speaker. Mr Speaker, I see the prior speaker has brought the issue of Serious Fun, a book now to be published by Paul Goldsmith, I think. Of course, Paul Goldsmith is the biographer of John Banks. The heliographer, that's right. Actually, there are two biographies already from John Banks. One was a vanity book. And that was the one that actually Paul Goldsmith authored. The other was a more transparent biography of some of his prior things called... that's right, but Noel Harrison, called Behind the Mask. Behind the Mask. I actually, because I stood against Mr. Bank, I had the misfortune of reading both.
The next one's his obituary. I remember John when he used to wear a costume.
The next, so I'm not sure whether this Serious Fun is poking fun at Mr. Banks in the next part of his career, or whether it's about some other topic. Mr. Speaker, it is though. There is a serious point to be made about that, though, and that is that rather than getting on and dealing with the important decisions that need to be taken through some pro-growth tax reform, through some really significant changes to savings over time in New Zealand, which this bill only tinkers with, this government's left tinkering and actually seems to spend more of its time managing its own faux pas than it does managing the interests of the country. Whether it's fiascos at ACC, exaggeration as to the level of problem by ACC by Dr. Smith, followed by miraculous cure about a year later, having jacked premiums up higher than he needed to. He then dropped them down for the election and then eventually bit the dust because of some other problems. And since then we've had John Judge dumped. We've had, I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with everything he did, but I actually did think he was a decent person and didn't deserve the indignities that he's suffered in recent months. We've other, even this morning. No, it continues. Yeah, dumped on him this morning. Accused him of sort of covering up documents rather than those documents having been wiped off a computer by the ACC themselves.
She could be sued for that.
Other things going wrong are legion. I mean, the latest budget we had was all about increasing class sizes to improve teacher quality. What a nonsense! That one bit the dust. And this bill itself, as the prior speaker, the man from Rotorua, said, it does increase the contribution under KiwiSaver, the compulsory contribution, to 3+3, but what it doesn't do is expand the scheme to more people. And what it doesn't do is set out a path for the future that has savings under that scheme growing progressively over the time. And New Zealand needs both of those fundamental steps if we are to right the wrongs that we've actually had in this country for decades now, since the last national government to tinker with savings scheme, Mr Muldoon, undermined... Oh, he talked about savings. Okay. Now, Mr Goldsmith tries to defend himself by saying that Mr English, in answer at question time today, said that there has been a decrease in household debt in New Zealand in the last 4 years. Now, you'd expect that. You'd expect that because in a recession, people put their chequebook away. They don't buy cars. They don't buy as many dishwashers or home improvements and things. They don't buy as many books, Mr Goldsmith. They don't buy as many books. How much do you think New Zealand household debt's gone down by? Even in the fact that... 0.2%, Dr. Klein. 0.2%. And they claim that is some wonderful success. 0.2%. I thought Mr English went through that part of the question very quickly, almost sotto voce, so that we wouldn't... 0.2%. And then he carried on with the rest of his answer. Mr Speaker, this government is failing to address the big issues. We need everyone who is in work, and except in cases of hardship, whether got a serious illness, for example, they should all be in KiwiSaver. That's the big difference between Australia and New Zealand. We had Mr English again saying, oh, it's resources, he was saying. Then why is it that we've got net migration out of Taranaki? When I uncovered that statistic this week, I was most intrigued to think, well, I'm sure that we'll have that same old excuse. Now that the excuse about Greece is wearing thin, given that people aren't leaving New Zealand because of Greece's problems, they're leaving because of New Zealand's problem, I thought, two-speed economy in Taranaki. Unfortunately, they're both a bit slow relative to Australia, because this government refuses to take the decisions that are necessary in order to get the economy moving. Now, these are long-term entrenched problems, but we will not overcome them unless the government takes the decisions that New Zealanders need them to take, that businesses need them to take, so that the economy starts moving. Now, there are some decisions that business can take, there are some decisions that businesses can't take, and our population relies upon the government taking those right decisions, and they're not being taken. So, Mr. Speaker, as we've heard from Dr. Clark, real wages are dropping, and then we hear the Minister of Finance say, oh, not after tax. What he doesn't tell you is that it's actually his not after tax figure. That's true enough if you're one of the highest income earners in New Zealand who got 40% of the tax cuts that went to the top 10%, their after tax real wages have gone up a little bit. But for the other people, I tell you that I am telling you the whole story. Their real wages after tax of the lower deciles in the economy have not gone up. They haven't gone up. They've gone down. And that's another reason why we've got this great outflow of people to Australia, or this terrible outflow of people to Australia. They have no sense of optimism that they can have a profitable and secure future in their own country. Now we have reached the terrible situation that a government who promised they were going to reverse this drain to Australia had it go up, and 40% of the people who are leaving are between the age of 18 and 30. From the regions as well as the cities. Those that are leaving from the regions aren't replaced by immigration into Auckland. And we have an ageing population in our regions, and we have a spiral downwards in some of those centres, and it's very sad. And I suspect it's not going to change much under this government. They say that unemployment's not as bad as it is in other countries, and that's true. Well, our unemployment is not as bad as it would be if we weren't losing 53,000 people per annum to Australia. Well, we have David Bennett say, throw off at that comment.
He just woke up. He just woke up. He was snoring.
Well, maybe.
He was snoring.
No, actually, he wasn't asleep. He wasn't asleep.
Just dopey.
No, but the speechless punch. Okay. Well, I'll let Judy over there take the next call. Mr. Speaker, the Taxation Annual Rates Returns Filing Remedial Bill does another thing that I'm not sure, whilst overall we're voting this bill, I'm not sure it's right. Contact Energy complain that this bill is changing the laws relating to the taxing of bonus shares issued by companies under profit distribution schemes. Now, the one public company that this was going to affect in New Zealand to a significant extent was Contact Energy. Contact Energy came along to the Select Committee and they said, look, don't do this to us, because actually what you're doing is making it harder for them to raise the capital that they think they need in their business. Because they have currently, they operate under a rule that enables them to have people retaining some of their earnings in the company, taking a bonus share in lieu of a dividend, which was causing no loss of tax to the revenue, but was causing an increased rate of leaving retained earnings in the company to the benefit of that company, and probably increasing New Zealanders' savings. Again, the government did not listen. They didn't listen to Contact Energy, who said that this was going to decrease the rate of savings in New Zealand and decrease the capital available in that sector of our economy, for no good reason. Now, the concern that the Inland Revenue Department had was that these schemes could be misused in other parts of the economy, but they're not currently being. So why didn't we wait until they were being misused before we fix this fictitious problem? Because at the moment it's a future problem rather than a current problem. Instead they sort of moved on this, again, very somewhat peripheral matter when they should have been dealing with bigger issues. Mr. Speaker, record numbers of people going to Australia. exports decreasing and the government is not pulling the levers it has control of in to reverse that trend. We're not doing the things that we need to improve our productive export economy, and the economy is not rebalancing.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr.